Hello language learners. One of the big obstacles for a lot of language learners is the price of language learning resources. Historically, like in the days of Rosetta Stone and Pimsleur, you could spend like $200 to $500 just to get like one little pack of CDs to learn a language, and stick in your computer and learn a language and hope for the best. There are many free or very cheap language learning resources out there. There are also some expensive ones. Of course, expensive being a relative term. In this video, I want to talk about these expensive language learning resources and why they're expensive from like an outsider's point of view. I've never created any language learning resource. I don't know the ins and outs and what goes into it. But from a consumer's perspective, from a language learning perspective, I want to talk about a few things that specific language learning resources are a little pricier, why they're a little pricier, what a language learner gets out of them by spending that kind of money. This isn't to say that necessarily every language learning resource out there that is expensive is worth it. Might not be worth it to me, might not be worth it to you. It's very relative. But I do want to highlight in a few slightly pricier language learning resources how that price can turn into quality instruction for language learners. I'm going to talk about 5 different language learning resources, and most of them are available in a variety of different languages. As always, if you want more information on any of the resources I'm going to talk about in this video, links below in my description box for more in-depth reviews, including prices, specific languages, etc. The first resource I'm going to talk about is Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone is historically really expensive, and I think Rosetta Stone is one of the reasons why people look at language resources that cost money and they're like, oh no, there's no way I could spend $500 to learn a language, which is fair. Rosetta Stone comes from a time before the internet, before apps were a thing. I mean, Rosetta Stone was one of like the iconic language learning resources, so it was fair. You know, there was less supply. At that point, there was like Rosetta Stone and Pimsleur and then dictionaries. So it was totally fair for Rosetta Stone to charge so much. Nowadays, obviously, there are a ton of options for language learners of most any different language. So asking consumers to spend hundreds of dollars for like beginner levels of a language is super unreasonable. Fortunately, over time, Rosetta Stone has been bringing its price down. And right now they've got a lifetime membership available for like $199. So that's not too bad. I think they're trying, which is good, but I know that's definitely one of my obstacles. When I think Rosetta Stone, I think really expensive, because historically it has been. I wouldn't say it's worth being incredibly expensive anymore. And like I said, I think Rosetta Stone is starting to recognize that as well. Now, the rest of the resources I'm going to talk about are still fairly expensive, but I believe for good reason. The first one is the Pod 101 series. So like Spanish Pod 101, French Pod 101, Dutch Pod 101, all those they're all in the same like Pod 101 umbrella, and they are pricey. I don't like their pricing strategy because in my review of Spanish Pod 101, I show you exactly what I'm talking about. The way they advertise the prices are kind of misleading, so I'm really not a big fan of that. With the Pod 101 series, all of the podcasts themselves are available for free. The Pod 101 series does have a few different tiers, like getting the transcripts like cut up in different ways, and the most expensive tier gives you your own private tutor, which, even though it's expensive, honestly, it's really worth it, because you can send this private tutor that you're assigned a private message and they get back to you within 24 hours. It's really closely directed. So when you first start out with this most expensive tier, you'll start out with an assessment, a legitimate assessment that assesses your grammar points, your writing, stuff like that. It's really in-depth. Spanish Pod 101 and all the other languages of the Pod 101 series is available in, which is a ton, is one of those resources that can take you from absolutely beginner to probably actually fluent. In this context, fluent meaning very comfortable producing a language, reading it, writing it, just being able to exist in language pretty comfortably. Now, considering the most expensive tier gives you that private tutor, honestly, that's really worth it, because, you know, a private tutor is expensive. Setting up a private tutor, like couple times a week for 30 minutes to an hour or whatever it is, that really adds up. With the Pod 101 series, it is a slightly expensive monthly fee. However, the like constant access to a private professional tutor is worth it. That's an expensive thing. That's a really expensive thing. The sheer amount of support and the detail of the course, where it really picks you through and makes sure you understand all the grammar, all the culture, everything. Point being, it's expensive. It is. I do not like how the prices are misleading, but I do like the pretty much constant access to a private tutor that will correct you, that'll hold your hand, that'll give you help. That is almost a priceless thing to have. Speaking of unlimited access to a private tutor, let's talk about Baselang. Baselang is only available in Spanish, and it's primarily Latin American Spanish, so, you know, bear that in mind. Baselang's thing is unlimited access to a private conversation tutor. Baselang is a fairly large team of native Spanish speakers who are trained specifically to either follow the curriculum that Baselang has, or literally just give you constant Spanish language practice if you so desire. So you can literally, you have half an hour to yourself, you can go into Baselang, can find a tutor to talk with you, and you just speak in Spanish for half an hour, about anything you so desire, and it's all wrapped up in one monthly fee. These are all native Spanish speakers who are here to sit and talk to you over Zoom, I believe it is. There are a lot of pros and cons about Baselang, which I go much more in depth about in my review. The biggest con that I have with Baselang is that the turnover rate is like ridiculous. There's no way to like look up which Baselang teachers are great or not so great because they change so constantly. However, depending on whether or not you want the course material, quote unquote, that Baselang offers and like a more strict, structured approach to Spanish, or if you just want to have spontaneous conversations, the one that you choose changes the price a little bit, but Baselang is like $150 to $2 a month, I believe, which a couple $100 a month, that's pretty expensive. But when you think about it, the amount of money that you spend on a weekly, bi-weekly, 3 times a week language teacher on Verbling or italki, that's gonna add up to much more than a couple $100 a month. That over the course of your learning, it's really gonna add up. Baselang is very worth it as long as you're using it. Do the math in your head, do the math, see what makes sense, how many lessons that you need to do a month for the price to be cheaper than it would be if you're just doing one-off lessons on italki or Verbling. Do the math, see if it would be worth it for you, see if you'll actually do it that much. I mean, sure, you can totally opt to take a lesson every single day on Baselang. I wouldn't recommend it. That's a lot. I tried it before. I got overwhelmed. Don't do that. But you can absolutely do that. You have the freedom to have a conversation in Spanish with a native Spanish speaker for 8 hours a day, every single day, if you do so choose. And it's all wrapped up in that monthly price. So worth it? Absolutely. Remember, Baselang is only available in Spanish. The next resource is available in Spanish and French, and it is called Quizzic. I love Quizzic. Quizzic is really great at grammar. That's what Quizzic does. What's special about Quizzic is its AI bot, where you get a 10-question quiz and you answer the question. You start out multiple choice. The ones that you get right, you don't have to look at again. The ones that you get wrong, it'll recommend that you look at specific grammatical concepts and study those concepts and all that stuff. It is very in-depth. It is like, at the moment, I don't think there's a better approach to grammar for Spanish or French. I really don't. I think it's as good as you get. With 10 question simple quizzes, you can really narrow down your very specific weaknesses in grammar. Brush up on them, use Quizzic's resources for the grammatical concepts, go to other sources. But Quizzic is without a doubt the best way, in my opinion, to really understand your weaknesses, really understand how well you understand grammar, because it doesn't just go through generic, vague subjects like the subjunctive, for example. It really taps into each individual micro, macro subject in grammar, and so it gives you really strong understanding. It also works off of the CEF4? Yeah. It also bases all of its content off the CEF4 thing, the A1 to C2 thing. It is CEFR. There is no 4. Please be gentle with me. 2020 has been a tough year. Grammatically speaking, you can really understand your current level in Spanish or French. It also has a ton of other resources for listening comprehension, stuff like that. And it's like 30 bucks a month or something like that, which is not that expensive. It's a little bit pricey on the, general scale, the relative scale of language learning resources. But 30 bucks a month, honestly, for what you get, freaking do it. Finally, number 5 is Rocket Languages. Rocket Languages is like Spanish Pod 101 in that it's available in a ton of languages. Rocket Languages is also a little bit pricey. I can't remember the price off the top of my head, but Rocket Languages also provides a very in-depth education from the very beginning to the very end of a language. It takes you really, really, really slow. It gives you a ton of options for, like, for example, the first conversation is, "Hi, my name is," "Nice to meet you." That, that kind of, little beginner introduction conversation that everybody learns at first. But it really gives you the chance to dive right into the culture, slow it down, hear everything, say everything. Gives you a ton of options. Rocket Languages is a kind of resource that can take you, like I said before, from beginner to fluent. Just like the Pod 101 series. The Pod 101 series and Rocket Languages are two peas in a pod. See what I pod, because Pod 101, it's funny. And for being as structured and well-rounded as Rocket Languages is, that's what makes the price worth it. Rocket Languages is amazing for somebody with zero experience in a language just because of how slowly it takes you. Like, it's not agonizingly slow like Rosetta Stone is. Like, one of the qualms that I have with Rosetta Stone, I mean, it's not meant for me, is Rosetta Stone is really, really, really slow and it forces you to be slow. Rocket Languages doesn't really force you to be slow. It gives you the opportunity, the option to be slow. But it's that very, very detailed, very, very structured education that makes Rocket Languages worth it for the price. Those are just a few examples of very, very high quality and also kind of expensive, moderately expensive to pretty expensive language learning resources. But I just wanted to give you an example of the difference between, a free or like $5 a month language learning resource and a $50, $200 a month language learning resource. Obviously, just because something is more expensive doesn't mean it's better. However, there are definitely reasons why these language learning resources are more expensive. They do have that, little pinch of quality in them that put them above something like Mondly or Drops or Duolingo or something really, really reasonably priced. Some people might believe that they're not worth it, and that's totally, their valid opinion. My job here is to explain to you why some language learning resources are more expensive than others. I don't want anybody to poo-poo a resource just because it's expensive, unless, you literally can't afford it, then that's totally fair. Because you might be missing out on a resource that'd be really, really beneficial to you. If you've tried any of these resources, please let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your take on them and if you think that they've been worth it for your language learning journey. Otherwise, I will see you every single Monday at my blog at crashculture.com and every single Wednesday and Sunday right here on YouTube. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.